The Complete Natural Food Retailer's Workshop with Danny Wells. Tape number 7. We found in our entire store we had only about 80 to 100 products that we actually marked down. Out of 5,000 products, we only found that we're about 80 to 100. And we went to our distributor that was putting our price stickers together and said, we want this margin on this product, this margin on that product. And we had little signs on them saying, regular price, our price, this. And so by having several price stickers around the store, people would come by and say, that's a good price on Sapphire. Oh, that's a good price on that. When they see good prices on products around, the perception is that you have good prices all the way around in your store. Coupled with blowout special case stacks. And you can deliver an image of low price specials with case stacking blowout specials better than anything else. And this is another reason for consolidating of orders, because if through our distributors, again, if we're getting 15% off of wholesale, and then each month you get on top of that your regular manufacturer discounts. So if Knudsen is giving 15 or 20% off on a juice and I'm getting 15% on top of that, I've got 25% to work with. If I want to give another 5% up, I've got juices that I'm blowing out at 30 to 35, 40% off. And so I've got those stacked up, plus any other specials that I can get at 30 to 40% off. So if people come walking in the store, the signs they see are things at good prices. And the perception is that the whole place has good prices. And we don't have to have everything then marked down. To give you an example, in our store, our gross profit margin was 39% in the store. And we had the reputation for having the lowest prices in town. And our gross profit margin is 39%. Now, that doesn't make sense in the industry. Usually you have a gross profit margin of 31 or 32% if you have the, quote, lowest prices in town. But they would walk in and see a case stack of, Rose Hips Vitamin C for $3.99, 500 milligrams, or for, 1,000 milligrams, $4.99, because we would buy, direct through a private labeler, straight ascorbic acid, sometimes to even compete with the drugstore, because we want to get them in the door. And next to that ascorbic acid for $4.99, they'd also see Rose Hips bioflavonoid combination and say, well, why is this one $2 more? And we'll say, well, it's got the bioflavonoid, time release, and this is what it does, and this is why it's more. Oh, well, I'll take this one because it sounds like a better product. But the fact is you still have prices out there to compete. So we competed with Safeway, we competed with Long's Drugstore, and we competed with other health food stores by having these individual blowout specials. So if I've got 80 regular products and then 20 blowout specials a month, that's only 100 products out of 5,000 that are marked down. And through good buying, I was still making margins on most of them anyway. Any question on that?
If you were a small store and you were in the area you have a next to store, besides mango, spicy, what other specialties you have
Okay.
and survive?
Good question. If you're a small store and you got a Gucci's next door to you, what do you do to survive? If you are you have to have a niche or a specialty when you're a small store. Some type of thing that people come back. And usually where the large stores cannot provide a service. The larger you get, the lower level of personal service you can get. I don't care how big and how nice the marketing is, packages are of, and Gucci's does a great job in their stores, but their service is nothing like a small store. I mean, you come into a small store and you're saying, how's your son's soccer game last week? I mean, you have a personal relationship with them, and people like that personal touch. And you'll sit down and take the time to sell them nutrition. And we had the reputation in the county of knowing more about nutrition than anybody else, because we would put on some seminars and we had our newsletter service that we'd mail out to our customers, and we'll get into this about how a newsletter can really set you apart. I've been hired by many stores right before a Gucci's was going to come in or a large 10,000 square foot store was going to come in, and we sat down, here's your marketing program, here's what you're going to do. And if you do this, we'll tell you, almost put it in writing, that your sales will drop 15% the first month or two, and within 3 months you'll be back to full sales, and then after that your sales will increase from there on in. And everyone that we've done that with, we haven't been off yet. And it happened with everyone. We haven't had anybody that's been put out of business that we've worked with a Gucci's or a Whole Foods or whatever coming into town. Most of the time, if you know what you're doing, you can benefit off of their increased exposure. Because I can tell you, when a Whole Foods or when a Gucci's comes into town, they're not going to take your business. They can't survive only on the health food business. They got to pull in mainstream America. They're not opening a store now unless they can do $100,000 to $200,000 a week minimum. And if you add up collectively all the health food stores in your area, there's no way they're even doing close to that. And so the average store that we have will drop maybe 10, 15% the first couple of weeks just because people go over and see what it's like. But they have to pull in mainstream America to make it. And so your expertise has to be that niche, that personal service, still having good prices. I mean, we were a thorn in big stores. We were a thorn in Safeway's side. I found out later from an executive who left Safeway. He said, your store, because Safeway head office was in Walnut Creek, and we had our store was, just to give you an idea how you can even affect, the real big guys. Our store was right here in the center of Walnut Creek, and a mile this way was a big Safeway, and a mile this way is a big Safeway. Their corporate headquarters for all the United States are in Walnut Creek. And when they were, their first two health food store sections, first health food sections they put into stores, they put into these two stores. And what they did is they came into my store and they did all this analysis. I mean, I could tell they were in there, doing it because they were only guys that shopped in our stores in suits and clipboards, So they're in there with suits and clipboards walking through my store, and sure enough, about, 6 months later, I see these two $40,000 sections, inventory sections, health food stores show up in their stores, almost clones of our particular store. Well, I could have said, knife in the heart, I'm going to shrivel up and die. But I thought, okay, what do we have? For one, we have service. You've got to sell these products. The average consumer walking by and seeing, green magma is not going to know what to do with that. And, you walk up to a clerk and say, pardon me, what do I do with the spirulina? They're going to look at you and say, would you like plastic or paper, ma'am? That's it. And so if you hold on long enough, which what we did, and they started massive advertising. They put in 4 color page ads of all their health food products, all Health Valley, all Hain, Mill Creek, everything, just blow out prices and specials. The very next week, I would come out and beat them by 10 cents on each item. I mean, heck, I only had to pick 15 or 20 items that they were doing, and I'll beat them on price. I was buying volume discounts, so if they sold 99 cents a can for chili, fine, I'll give it away for 95 cents. So every time that they came out next week, I'd come out a nickel cheaper or something like that. I mean, I'll play their game for a while. After that, I advertised an executive from Safeway came and said, you are a thorn in our side? They tried everything on it. I don't know how much our little store did for that, but I can tell you right now that they have 8 shelves, 8 feet wide, 8 shelves is all they have left in that store, and the same thing over here. Because, rather than be intimidated, realizing that they can't sell these products. If it's mainstream and there's enough there, fine. If it's Oat Bran Flakes, everybody knows about Oat Bran Flakes, they can sell those, but they're never going to sell spirulina. They're never going to sell that. And so we're a new products industry. We're in the education field. And if we can stress new products and education, we're the ones that have the time to introduce it to the customer. We can take the time to sit down and say, hey, have you heard about, CoQ10? And tell them exactly what it's for, and you get them started on it. And if it goes mainstream, fine. We got another 100 new products we can tell. So our secret is to keep those new products and educating them to try these new things and to get them introduced to them. And when it goes mainstream, let it go. Let it go. Okay, let's see. We've been doing 1 hour, and you know what happens in 1 hour. It's time for a break. So we'll let you, it's 1:45, and let's take a 5-minute break because we've got a lot to cover today. So just jump up and down or get a drink for 5 minutes, and we'll be back. We can gather back together here. We got our profit and loss statements in order. We got our inventory under control. We know how to merchandise. We know how to compete by having it properly marked. Now is the time to advertise. This is a mistake. One of the mistakes a lot of us make is that after coming back from a seminar like this, we start doing things in the opposite order. Is that we shouldn't get out there and advertise to get more people in the store until our store is ready. And specifically, I just enjoyed a conversation with one gentleman here about how so many of the stores in the industry are just not good examples of health. And, the stores look bad, they look shabby, they look dingy, the products are just not well represented. And of course, we don't want to do advertising to get them into those type of stores. We could, and we go into this a little bit in our advanced workshop about some thoughts on collective cooperative advertising this industry could do to really bring in mainstream America. But we're really not ready for it yet because too many of our stores just don't look good. I'm amazed, and I've been in so many cities, I'll maybe find 1 or 2 health food stores that look clean, sharp, neat, and attractive, and I'll see for every 1 or 2, I'll see 5 or 6 that are still dingy, hole in the walls, all kinds of spaces on their shelves, old-looking product, and the people behind the counter don't look very enthusiastic. I mean, it's like, are you having a good time here? And it's like, do you really want to do this? It reminds me of the old man there was a man who turned 100, and so the editor of the paper said, well, sent a young reporter out and said, I want you to go out and find out what the secret to this guy's old age is and write an article about it. He says, okay. So the young reporter goes over and said, tell me, sir, what do you attribute the secret of your longevity? And he says, son, I'll tell you, the secret is garlic every day. And the guy kind of leaned back and says, well, why do you call that a secret anyway? The secret to advertising is this. Number one, we've already established the fact that 15% of the population shop in natural food stores. There's 2 ways of increasing sales. One way is to get more people to come into your store. The second way is to get the people that are already coming into your store to buy more product. And we do that through 2 different types of advertising. One is called vertical advertising, one is horizontal. Horizontal advertising, like the horizon, goes on out forever. It advertises to everybody out there, and it tries to get new people converted to come into our stores. Vertical advertising takes one particular segment of the market. Maybe it's like your own customer base. Your own mailing list would be a vertical market of customers who come in your store, and is vertically taking that market and advertising to them. And we do both types of advertising, and we'll explain which type. But first we should learn the value of an impression. Because in this industry, we don't understand what an impression is, and that's one of the reasons we have trouble with advertising. What an impression is every time the consumer gets an impression in your mind of your store, a service or product it renders, that's an impression. Anytime they think of the name of your store associated with the product or service you render, that is an impression. And that can come from an ad in the paper, that can come from driving by and seeing your store sign in the window with a sale sign for a product because they're associating a product with the name of your store. That can come from radio, that come from another consumer saying, hey, have you been down to ABC Health Food Store? You know, they got some good stuff down there. Those are all impressions. The experts tell us it takes a minimum of 7 impressions before it sinks in. I mean, if we don't hear something 7 times, then it doesn't even stick. So that is why you keep hearing the same ads on the radio at least, 7 or 50 or 100 times. The same ones on the TV, the same ones in the paper, because they want to make sure you get at least 7 impressions so it sticks in your mind. Before we spend any money, let's first find out what we can do for free in this industry. If we don't have a dime at all to spend on advertising, we can be doing a good job of promoting. First thing we can do is we can actually put some signs in the windows and doors on some of our specials. Now, this doesn't mean cluttering up like we talked about yesterday in the slides. We don't want to have clutter. We want to get our windows clear. But there is one store in our county that there is a store here, and there's a lot of stores around them on a main drive street, and there's a stoplight right here. And they have this big window, and they have, I guess they got a roll of butcher paper years ago because they're still using it. And they put in 3 big signs in the window. And it may be like, Folk brand, 99 cents a pound, vitamin E, $3.99, and organic apples, 69 cents a pound, whatever it is. They just take 3 items from usually 3 different departments. These signs are so big that when you're driving along here, you can see. You get the name of the store, ABC Health Food Store here, and these 3 products. And so it's almost like the type of thing where we say when you come into a store and you're getting a case stack of 1 or 2 items so that they're concentrated on one thing at a time. So if people are driving by with a stoplight right here, as the traffic backs up, you got a captive audience, and you look over and you see the name of the health food store and their specials. Every week, if you drive on this street, you're going to get an idea of what this store is selling and the kind of products that they have, even if you never go in the door. This is the only type of advertising I've ever seen this store to do. The only type. I've never seen them take ads out of the paper. I mean, every so often you see a little ad, coming for a Christmas special, but basically they've never been on TV, radio, any other type of advertising program. They do $800,000 a year in business based on putting signs in the window in a very visible place. Now, you may not have a store position like this that has this kind of visibility, and this might not work as well for you, but that's one thing that you can do that costs, a roll of butcher paper and some big marking pins. Manufacturer's brochures to bag stuff. In the 70s, Solgar came out with DLPA, D-L-phenylalanine. And they sent with a little flyer that said, it'll be used for an appetite suppressant, and here's a study on it, and for depression, antidepressant. I went down to the copy office, and I copied off a couple hundred of these things, and I just bag stuffed this piece of literature in everybody's bag. And we started selling a lot of DLPA. And I started making more copies and put it in everybody's bag, and we sold a lot more. Every couple days, I was phoning back to New York to Solgar to send us more DLPA. Now, they were the only company that made that product at that time. At the end of the month, they called us and said, do you know that you've sold more DLPA than any other store in the country? We sold 288 bottles of DLPA at $15.95 a bottle in 30 days. We were a 1,000 square foot store, more than anybody else in the country. And all that we did was bag stuff for 1 month, one little flyer in everybody's bag about the DLPA. Now, granted, it happened to mention appetite suppressant, and anything around a diet is going to be, selling a lot better. I mean, if this was a product that was good for hemorrhoids, I don't think we'd have people running in and saying, yes, I want several cases of this stuff. But the fact is putting something in their bag works. We bag stuff our newsletter now, and we have a rule in our store that customer never leaves the store without a bag stuffer. Now, we showed some slides of how some of our stores have literature all over the place. We got it stacked all around the store. We got products, literature, product, literature, product, literature. We go into those stores and we take all the literature, pick out your 25 best-selling, your most frequently used pieces of literature that when somebody asks about spirulina, yeah, here, I'll give you a flyer on it. Then all the rest of it, we just bag stuff systematically. And we don't like dump a whole pile of these because they won't read 15 or 20 or 30 of them. Just selectively pick one or two items and bag stuff in everybody's bag. I will guarantee you will get increased sales. Sandwich board outside of the store. If you don't have a big window type thing, or even if you do and your landlord will allow it, sometimes putting that sandwich board up there, same thing, just with one item on it, one statement. So as people walk by, because many times people walk by, they don't even look in your store window. And if you are allowed a sandwich board, I've seen stores that just put in, come in for a free sample of organic apple juice. Ooh, okay. Come right in, you're serving free organic apple juice, and you're going to sell a lot of apple juice. Or come in today, our vitamin whatever is $5.99, it's regularly $9.95. One item, large, sign, special, either get them into a sample or get them into your store for one product. Then again, very minimal cost on that. You can do it yourself, just change it maybe once a week or whatever on the sandwich board. Sampling, that you can get reimbursed from your distributors, and this is a very good use for your brokers. Go to a broker and say, I want to set up a sampling program. We used our brokers this way and said, look, we're very busy on Saturdays. We'll give you one Saturday a month. That's 4 Saturdays we have. If you want to coordinate the product, you want to get someone in here to rep it, and if you can't get someone in here to rep it and give it out, let us know, and we'll get somebody to sample it. Probably 3 out of the 4 weeks, we had someone else coming in for free. They came in, brought in their own wares, brought in all their cases of product, sampled it out for us, sold it. We bought what they sold. They brought back what didn't sell. You can work out these kind of deals. If you've got a decent volume store, if your store isn't high volume, you may have to do your own sampling because they're not going to come out if you're just going to be able to work on a case or two. But still, they'll reimburse you for all the products you sample. Most every company will if you ask for it. If you're looking for a general overall plan on advertising, we usually suggest this. And if someone would use these numbers, if you do this, 5% of your gross for the first year, 4% second year, 3% third, and 2% from the fourth year on out, we can guarantee you by the time you're into your 4th year, you would have reached 85% of your potential. If your store is set up right, it's merchandise right, and you use this advertising plan, you would have reached 85% of your marketing potential, sales potential by the 4th year. And it happens all the time.
When you use the term advertising, you include the cost of newsletters, your mailing costs, or you're just talking about media?
No, that's all advertising costs. If you have a newsletter and mailing, that's advertising. That would be your bulk rate, that would be the whole cost, printing, whatever you use for advertising. That's all included. Now, one mistake we make is telephone books. Most of us, or many of us, have way too big of ads in the telephone book. Now, we've got to think about the telephone book here for a minute, folks, because the only people who are getting rich on the telephone book is a telephone company. Look at the telephone book and try to find an ad for Safeway or for Kroger's or for any of the grocery stores. And what you'll see is one line, Safeway, and the phone number. One line, phone number. Our type of businesses, like the grocery businesses, our customers shop once or twice a week, usually. If they're a food customer, they shop once or twice a week. If they're a vitamin customer, they usually shop once or twice a month. But they're a regular customer that comes into the store. Once they find out about you, and usually they don't find out about you from the yellow pages, they're going to come in your store. We wind up spending $100, $150 a month in a yellow page ad that basically 80 to 90% of it is going down the drain. What our recommendation is, if you have to do something, maybe get a box this size if you want. Let's get this over here. This size or like that. We started out with a big ad. We slowly shrank down to where we're winding up with things like this in the ad. I'll probably eventually get down to one-liner and use the rest of my money for really doing some real advertising. How often does your hot water heater break down? Once in a lifetime. And so if you're a plumber, you need to have a half-page ad in the yellow page because you're vying for that once-in-a-lifetime business. But see, our customers aren't coming out once in a lifetime. They're coming out regularly all the time. And once they know where you are, they're never going to go back to the yellow pages again. So the only time your yellow page ad is really going to work is when somebody new moves into the area and they're looking for a health food store. But how does the typical health food consumer find the health food stores? They have a way of sniffing them out. If you were not in the yellow pages at all, a true health food consumer would find your store. Believe it or not, they would find your store. The average health food consumer will not travel, as we said, more than 8 to 10 minutes. And so if you have people, if you can put a dot on a map where you are, and do an 8 to 10 minute drive line around there, most of your customers are going to be right here. And the phone book hits thousands of miles around it. A little exaggerated, but I mean it's all over the place. So if we can focus in taking that money out of the phone book and maybe just doing direct mailers in this area, you're going to be much more effective than you ever would with a large phone book ad. So that's one place we may waste money and can save a lot by reducing the phone book ad. Couponing. Here are two coupons. The top coupon, they sent out 10,000, they got back 4. It cost them $400 for this mailer, so it cost them $100 a customer to get them in the door. This bottom coupon here, we sent out 6,000, and we got back 300 of them. It cost us about $400 to send that out. Now, what is the difference between the two coupons? Why did one bring us back 300 and this one bring him back 4? We won't take the time to have you answer that because I see a stupor of thought over the audience. But the answer is that you have to realize how coupons work. Now I want you to think as a consumer for a moment. When you get a coupon booklet in the mail or a coupon packet, what do you do with it? Okay, if you don't throw it out, what do you do with it? You go through it and you look to see what are the places you're already shopping or things you already use. I just got a new car. I get a coupon booklet for $50 off on a new set of tires. I might say, hey, that's a good deal. Yeah, take these tires off my car and put on a new set of tires. I don't need tires. I don't care how good the deal is. I'm not going to go there. Most of the time that somebody brings in a coupon, they're a customer that already comes to your store, and they pick the coupon up and say, yeah, I shop there. Next time I'm in, I'm going to take advantage of that coupon. A coupon will very rarely bring new people into your store. Knowing this, our slowest month of the year is August. So in August, we mailed out to all of our own customers 6,000 coupons to our own customers. And we got 300 people to come back because we knew our own customers would be bringing these back and we wanted to bring them back in the store. If you are going to be putting out a blanket coupon out there, you want to give them something that everybody wants. If people aren't using vitamins, and only half the American public uses vitamins, so you know half of them are really turned off already. And if for $2, if they're not already shopping in your store or shopping health food stores, they're not going to come in for a couple bucks off. But everybody eats bread. Now we did one time a coupon like this and said free loaf of whole wheat bread with any purchase. And we went to a bakery that normally baked like a 1.5, 2 pound loaf. We had them bake us a mini loaf of bread. It was like an 8-ounce loaf of bread. It cost us 36 cents. We gave away hundreds of loaves of bread. I don't know if I'd recommend that again because it was really pandemonium for our baker. He was going crazy trying to keep up with all the bread that was coming in. But we brought people in because we're giving away something they want. So if you're going to be giving them something away, to say $2 off on your purchase to blanket America, to mainstream America, is not going to bring people in. If you want to give $2 off to your own customers, it'll bring them in. Now, we don't particularly use coupons anymore. But the reason I bring this up is too many of us try these coupon mailers. You think, well, it's going to mail to 10,000 homes, and they tell you all these statistics of other people about how good it does. But for this industry, I'll tell you, you're going to be like this man. You mail out 10,000, you're going to get 4 or 5 back. It's going to cost you $100 per customer to get them back. And those 4 customers were his customers already. So he paid $100 to have them come in to give them $2 off. That was a really good deal. Horizontally, the best medium we have found has pretty much been display, print media, newspaper advertising. If you're a smaller store, you might try the penny saver or local throwaway type of paper. The secret is consistency. The 2 things you try to do is to get as local as possible. If you have a big paper, like ours had a county paper that they distributed, and we found we could buy zones, and we tried to find the zone that was closest to our store, so we weren't advertising in the entire county. We would advertise in our zone and buy that zone for our newspaper print. I know there was one store that all they did was they had this one little penny saver magazine that came out near their store, and they took the back page. I think it cost them like $200 for the entire back page of this thing. It came out once a week, and that's all they did was that. And their stores, their sales are about $700,000 for this store, and that's pretty much their only advertising. They were consistent. Their customers knew every week, I think it was every other week, the back page, they would have their specials and whatever they were going to have every other week. It was consistent, and they did well with it. The best vertical medium we have found has been your monthly newsletter. This is where you vertically talk to your own customers and sell them more product. Now, before we discuss the newsletter, let's talk a little about that ad that you would be putting in the newspaper, a little highlight of how we make that the most effective. For one, a large ad is better than several smaller ones. We found that through much experimentation, it was better for us to get the biggest ad we could once a month than it was to have smaller ads every week throughout the month. Because you want to deliver the impression that you're bigger than you really are, especially if you're a small store. So we wound up taking the biggest ad our budget could afford, and once a month we would put an ad in there. We would place it the first week of the month, because most people have more discretionary income the first week of the month than any other time. So if you're going to put that one month ad out, you don't put it the third week of the month. That's the worst to do. We found that main news section A was the best place to put it for us. That if we put it in the food section, it was competing with all the other full and two-page spreads from all the other stores, and our store didn't look that big in the food section. But in Section A, we found that it looked pretty decent because there were very few full-page ads in Section A. What does the ad contain? We would put a few of our blowout price specials. We would also put an educational section in it, a little philosophy section, white space, and graphics. So what this means generally is that if you've got an ad design and you got the name of your store up here, we may put 3 blowout specials, and an educational section we would wind up taking one product that we're trying to highlight and educate the consumer through a little article on this particular product. And so if we had something like high cholesterol question mark, or if we had in the allergy season, sneezing or hay fever question mark, then we would talk about our remedies that we have for hay fever. We'd try to make it timely as to what people would want currently information on, and this would do as much to sell product or even more than just advertising your specials. You may also put in lines about your philosophy, that we only carry these particular products, and we only have this in our store, and we also have this service, and we do nutritional consulting down there. But not as much listing of straight items as you are getting specific about individual things that you're doing. You can check insert rates for newsletters with your local newspaper. We found that the insert rate for our local newspaper was $38 a thousand, which is pretty reasonable. So we could give them 5,000 of our newsletters, and for $38 a thousand, they would insert it with the newspaper and deliver it right to the home. And we could then again zone it where our store was and have it delivered right to that group of people. You can also use local zip code mailing list. Again, the thing we're trying to do is focus on an 8 to 10 minute drive range. A mistake we make is the advertising is going way outside of that range. That's one reason that radio and TV for most of us is really kind of a waste, because the radio and television audience is 50 to a 200 mile radius. Now, if you've got multiple stores and you have a large store and several large store operations, sure, your stores will be placed around there, and television and radio would do fine for you. The other thing you can do is distributor sale flyers. They come out with them pre-printed. If you don't have the budget to pre-print your own, then you can come up with those type of flyers, like the distributor will come out with for you, print your name on it, and these can be inserted in the newspaper, depending on what the rate, but find out what the insert rate is, and they can insert these locally in your own area. But whatever you decide to do, let's be consistent with it. You pick one type of advertising and stay with it for a while, and you make sure that you've decided on an advertising budget. Now, say, for an example, you've already been in business for a while, and you're using 2% of your budget for advertising, and say you're doing $600,000 a year. 2%, that's $12,000 a year, and so that means you're just going to spend $1,000 a month on that. I would probably spend out of that maybe $10 on my $10 on the telephone book ad. That'd be about the amount that I'd put out of $1,000 on that. And if I was doing $600,000 a year at that particular point, I would probably be dividing and using about 40% of that for horizontal and 60% for vertical. The usual numbers on this, if you're doing less than $200,000 a year, then almost all of your advertising should be horizontal. You want to get more people in the store. So if you're doing less than 200,000 or you have like less than 100 customers a day, almost all your advertising ought to be horizontal. You want to definitely get more people in the store. You don't start putting in a newsletter yet because you don't have enough people coming in the store to justify that budget. But once you start doing 300 or 400,000, you start bringing in horizontal, and by the time you're up to around 600,000 or so, you might even get to a 50-50, 60-40 split. Meaning that you might put an ad in the paper, a $400 ad, and then you have $600 left over to do your in-store newsletter or vertical advertising. Now, why a newsletter? I give you a sample newsletter there. One of the services our company does offer is we do custom newsletters. I'm not here to sell our newsletter service. I'm here to sell you on newsletters, and I think every store ought to do their own, period. If they don't, we happen to offer a service for that. But what I'm going to show you is, after the experimentation in our store and now of using and developing newsletters for stores for 6 years, the format that works and why it works. You will see ad after ad in our industry magazines about stores doing tremendous jobs with their newsletters. And I could go up here almost and put up 50 or 60 different ones about how the newsletter can be so effective. Why is it effective and how it is And why it is effective is this. A newsletter educates the customer, and an educated customer will always buy more. One of the things that we have over mainstream America and the supermarkets is this education. And they come to us for education and information. A good newsletter would be, we have found a 4-page newsletter is the format that works. One of the reasons 4 pages is because people are reading less and less. 10 years ago, when we were doing $600,000 in our store, we were selling over 100 Let's Live magazines a month. Now we're doing in the store, and I keep saying my or ours or theirs interchangeably. It's not really my store anymore, but I work along with my brother so closely in different things that, I sometimes say, it's basically his store. But the volume now is like between 3 and 4 million, and we're selling about probably 20 or 30 Let's Live magazines. What's happening? People are reading less. Time is becoming more valuable. And a 4-page newsletter is read. And a secret to doing your own newsletter is, 1, keeping your articles to 1 page or less, addressing conditions, so that we're addressing the situation. Here's the condition, okay, excessive hair loss. And when you do your articles, make sure we're putting in the actual verse and citing. In one study, within 6 to 8 weeks of initiating a biotin shampoo treatment, 89% of the 1,200 men showed a marked reduction in hair loss. Okay, there it is. You're stating a fact. You're stating the studies. We can no longer write things unsubstantiated, and there's tons of information out there. So what you want to do is to bring this information out, and it virtually sells the products for you. Try to keep white space in graphics. Make it timely. And this can be the fun part of your newsletter, putting in a couple graphics. Everybody that comes into your store brushes their teeth. We know that for a fact. Everybody that comes into your store brushes their teeth. But how many use your dentifrice? About 8% of them. If we could write an article telling them why our dentifrice is better than the one they're using, what happens then is the customer that comes in to buy the bread, the yogurt, and the vitamin C is now buying your bread, vitamin C, yogurt, and toothpaste. Everybody that comes into your store shampoos their hair, but how many buy your shampoo? 13% of them. So if some people can come in and find, gee, I want to use this shampoo now, you've got somebody buying vitamin C, your dentifrice, their bread, and the shampoo. So every time the newsletter comes out, it has the potential to convert them to buy 1 or 2 more products each month. And that's where we increase our sales. You want to make them timely. For instance, in our particular an issue in the December, it was Boost Your Immune System, and it's highlighting vitamin C and vitamin A and zinc. People read these things, they come back, they want the products. This is the back page of the newsletter with your return address, bulk mailing permit, because you don't want to mail them out when you get to mailing them at 29 cents. You want to do bulk mail and do it about half price. When we first started mailing them out, our average sale in our store was $8 was our average sale in our store. And we had, at this particular time, we had a 1,700 square foot store, and I was already seeing about 300 people a day, which was pretty jammed in there in a 1,700 square foot store. And I thought, well, how can I increase my sales without bringing more people in the store? I cut out totally my display advertising, stopped it all, put all the money in the newsletter. Within 2 years, our average sale went up to $12. We were able to increase our sales 50% without bringing any more people into the store. I didn't have to hire any more employees. I really didn't have to bring in and get a larger store. Some people say, well, it's time to expand now, get a larger location. But I was able to get another 2 or 3 years out of this location and increase my sales strictly by educating the consumer with the newsletter. Now, one of the things you want to do with the newsletter is that we suggest is that you insert a monthly special sheet, and it can be as little as 4 or 5 or 6 items, or it can be as an extensive, like in our particular store. Our monthly special sheet was like this, was several items, and we would have it by category. So you'd know the groceries that were on special and the bulk products and the vitamins, and so each category, they could look each month to see what was on special. Yeah. Okay, good question. Let me give you an example of that and why we do that. If I can pull one out here that's probably already put together for me, so I can make it. Here we go. Here's one store that we have that does it. The newsletter itself is not really dated. This material, the articles in this are pretty important, and a lot of people I have found, our customers, will 3-wing punch this and keep it in binders. It is not uncommon for our customers to come in with a newsletter from January, 9 months later, and say, there's an article here on calcium that I was reading, and I think my mother could use this. It makes a value on it. As soon as, if you incorporate something dated, these specials good through this month in this, for some reason it becomes dated. It's like, okay, this is only good for this month. And if it's printed as part of it, then it's like they bring the whole newsletter in to get the specials. They circle the specials they want, or if we put a coupon in it, they'll tear them out, and therefore the newsletter gets thrown out. So we found that by making an insert sheet, that people will bring the insert in and say, also, I was reading an article about that calcium, I'd like to pick that up too, but they wind up keeping this, and we more or less just encourage them to do that. I mean, and that's the reason we don't incorporate it. But there are many stores that out of a 4-page newsletter will make 1 page of it their specials, and that would be fine too. But this is kind of the ultimate to put an inserted one in it. Good question. And we did some testing on this to find that out. We did 2 years in a row, we did almost identical articles in the newspaper, and 1 year we ran on the same product we were talking about. One was a super energy enzyme, the SOD. We wrote a great article about selling that, and we sold a couple gross of these from the newsletter article. And at the same time, we had it on special. We had it like $4 off. The next year, we did the same article, and we didn't put it on special. We sold the same amount. And so we found that we really don't have to tie it in, that our specials will be something else, because if we can get people to come in from the specials, and the other thing about putting the specials in it is the newsletter articles will encourage people to buy more product, but this will encourage them to come in the store right now while it's on their mind, because this says, these specials good through this month, or good for 2 weeks, or whatever you put on your special sheet. So it gives a sense of urgency to come into the store, and then they remember, oh yeah, I read this article and I want to get these products. But you can do it both ways. I mean, like with our newsletter service, we send out a preview sheet for the next 2 months, and I know a lot of stores that use the service, they coordinate the specials in tying into the products that are going to be mentioned in the newsletter, because they want to case stack them up there. So when people read about it, they come in, oh yeah, I read that article about spirulina, I want to be able to try some. So I'd say, both ways you can try it. There isn't really a general rule of thumb on that for me.
Yeah, 2 questions on the newsletter. Number 1,
Good. And this is a mailing list? Okay, good question. Your mailing list is important. We think every store ought to develop a mailing list. It is one of your most valuable assets you can have as a mailing list of your customers. The way that we developed a mailing list was we first started taking names off of checks. That's all we did. We didn't even have a sign-up sheet or anything. And we found that we could collect about 200 names a month. And by the time 1 year went by, we had 2,500 names just from taking them off of checks. If you got a copy machine, it works out real easy. We just put them on a copy machine and gave them to somebody who was doing our newsletter mailing list on computer. And then what happens is that they would then print out for us a mailing list of names, and we got to know the list pretty well, so that we know we wouldn't have to be copying checks towards if it was a regular customer. But then to update it, once a year, we would send out, and I think on one of these back pages I had this written, and some stores do it every month, but we would just do it once a year. You put this on your newsletter when you mail it out, address correction requested. And they will send back an address correction, and if anybody moved, then we would be able to update it. And if they move within our buying area, we continue to send it to them. But if it said, when they move now to Indiana, it's like, well, scratch them. They're going off the list. But I also had the philosophy that if somebody in that area had already come in the store at least once, I'd rather be sending out maybe 1 or 2 or 50 or 100 too many than not at all, because this is my major marketing tool now. And so if there was a few going out there that were being a little bit wasted, that's okay, because I'm doing a lot less wasting the money here than I am by putting it out in the paper now and trying to, attract 85% of the people that aren't really caring about my products anyway at this particular time. Yeah, you sure can. And that's one. The question was, can the newsletter be effective if it's used bi-monthly or quarterly? And we really suggest that for small stores. That when you're starting out, if you don't have the advertising budget to put out a monthly newsletter, then you might consider a bi-monthly newsletter or a quarterly newsletter. In fact, when you start looking at the first place you start is with your advertising budget. You decide first, what's 2% of my gross and how much can I afford? And then you decide, what's it going to cost me to do a newsletter? And I know some stores say, I can do a monthly newsletter, but I can only afford to mail it out once a quarter. And so they do that. They mail it out once a quarter and say, come in the store the other 2 months and you'll get it once a quarter. And then they get to where they can mail it out bi-monthly, but every other month they're also get bag stuffing it. So there's all kinds of ways to use it. And so don't jump in and spend money on advertising that you don't have. It's important first to start with the advertising budget. 2%, at least 2%. If you can go with 3%, and I'll find that when I look at somebody's profit and loss statement, some people, the industry average for rent, say, is about 5 to 7% rent. And if I go into some store and I'm doing analysis for them, and their sales are really low, and they're paying 2% rent, I'm saying, well, one of the reasons your rent's so low is it's a lousy location. And so normally you'd be paying 5%. So to get the people over here, I'd take like 3%. That would normally be paid for rent, and just add that to my 2% and make a 5% advertising budget now because my rent is so low, I really need to bring more people over to this lousy location because I really would be spending more on rent. And so by doing that, by having 5% to deal with, I can really get my store on the map by having a regular advertising program that will be beneficial. Now, the way, yes, sir. Good. Excellent. I mean, what we found in our particular newsletter that a couple of tricks on the newsletter that we found. One, you go to the chiropractor's offices and some salons and some beauty salons or dentists and just put a stack in their waiting rooms. For one, these are usually chiropractors and dentists they are usually sympathetic to the natural food movement anyway, and so they'll be happy to let you have something new instead of a 1972 Time magazine to read. You can now have a timely newsletter. The second thing we found about these is that we got one of these plastic little boxes that attach to the side of the wall, and we stuck it out the outside of our store. It said free newsletter. And it is amazing. I had sat there in my store and watched as people walk down the street and saw this little free newsletter, and they'd pick it up and walk down, and they'd open it up and turn right around and come back in my store. I mean, I remember this one day, one guy came in and says, article on PMS. My wife has PMS. I want this product. He bought a $25 bottle, just like that. I mean, never been in the store before, but I mean, that was a free newsletter. Before we're open, I'll see a lot of our customers will be standing there, and sometimes they back up to the door before we open, and they're all there with the newsletter in hand because they're reading it. Captive audience. It's right there. So, I mean, they're just free, stuck on the outside of the door. So getting them out to health clubs, excellent idea. To other places, put a stack of them there. It gets your name out on a regular basis. See, every month, every time somebody comes there, they're going to see your name of your store on your newsletter there. Very effective.
Creating a newsletter, how much time are you allocating to that newsletter, labor-wise, and are you really creating articles or flipping them?
Okay. That's a really good point because I've spent a lot of time developing that obviously since we do that now as a service for others and we have it down to a science. But when I did it in my store, we did a lot of clipping and we would just call and get permission to reproduce the articles out of a lot of our industry magazines. You can get information from a lot of our suppliers too. In fact, Nature's Way 800 number, you can dial Nature's Way 800 number and you want information on any herb. I remember calling up one time and saying, I'm going to be doing an article on valerian. I'd like some information on valerian. I got about a packet of probably 150 research papers on valerian alone. Next time I was more specific. I'd like a couple pieces of paper written in a layman's term on valerian, okay? And I got it. But, almost every vitamin company has these things they send out. But make sure that it's not the hype advertising packet, that it's deciding the verse, chapter, and verse of where the information came from.
Yeah, I was just going to mention on gathering information, one thing for us, our customers, and why to write articles for us. People from the hospital, nutritionists, etc., they'll write articles.
Yes, and that's another good source too. I found that I like to kind of control the newsletter because I wanted to know. I had specific things I wanted to promote and tell people about in my store. We use the newsletter to obviously promote higher ticket items. We're not going to put a lot of articles about wheat bran in there because it was that time wheat bran was 39 cents a pound, and it was like how much wheat bran can you sell to pay for a page of a newsletter? But we would usually wind up having it on supplements, herbal remedies, body care items, but we still have food-oriented articles in it too. In fact, the mix we use now for our clients that we do it for is about 75% supplements and body care and 25% food. And as far as the time involved in this thing, that really depends on what you have. I mean, if you've got desktop publishing set up, if you've got to do cut and pasting or you got to pay someone to do that for you, that can be more time involved. But I myself found that I did 1 day a month is what it took me. And in that 1 day a month, I would do the newsletter and then coordinate all the specials. This concludes the program on Side 7. The workshop continues on tape number 8.